Alright, so today we're doing notes on comparing and ordering decimals. Only decimals. Alright, so when you compare and order decimals, there are two things that can be really helpful and that you need to do. The first thing is you want to stack up the numbers. And when you stack them up, you want to be sure that the decimal points and place values are neatly lined up. I'm going to even underline that too, because that is so important. Okay? These boxes that we put here are going to help you. So if you ever want to use graph paper for this activity, you're welcome to, because it's very helpful. So let's start off these notes. We're going to order these numbers from least to greatest. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put them in the box. And I'm putting one number in each box. So let's do that. 0.875, 0.75, 1.105, 0.099. Now we notice this number is shorter than the others, and we want them to all be the same length, have the same number of digits. So I can put a 0 here as a placeholder, and it's not going to change my number. All right? Now, when I order these, I'm going to pretend they're not decimals, and I'm going to think of them just as regular whole numbers. So 875, 750, 1,105, and 99. I'm looking for least to greatest, so I'm going to start with the smallest. I know the smallest one here is going to be 99. So I'm going to put a 1. So 99 thousandths is my smallest number. Now I only need to look at 3. 875, 750, 1,105. My next smallest is this one, 75 hundredths. Looking between these two now, I've got 875 and 1,105. 875 is smaller, so number 3 is going to be 875 thousandths, leaving 1 and 105 thousandths to be number 4. Last thing you have to do is rewrite them over here. 0.099, 0.75, 0.875, and finally 1.105. There they are, least to greatest. All right, let's look at number 2. Now number 2 is where it gets a little bit tricky. Okay? When we're ordering negatives, bigger is smaller. Bigger is smaller, and that's where it gets really tricky. So we like to think of a thermometer. If you think of a thermometer, I can say easily that 60 degrees is greater or warmer than 20 degrees. I can say 20 degrees is greater or warmer than negative 10 degrees. But when we get to something like this, which one's colder, negative 10 or negative 20? Negative 20 is colder. So if you look at a thermometer, as you go down, it gets colder, or the numbers get smaller. Okay, so when we do these, I want you to think of a vertical number line. Kind of put in our usual negative positive number line on its side. Okay, so here we're going to order some numbers. Let's put them in the boxes. Negative 3.75, negative 2.5, negative 3.09, and negative 0.2. Again, I'm going to put zeros in those blank boxes as placeholders. They're not changing the number at all. So when I'm doing negatives, I'm going to try putting them on a number line to help me visualize where they would be. So a number line doesn't always need to start with 0. I'm going to start with 0 on mine. I'm going to put negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, and negative 4. So all my negative numbers. And I'm going to label this just so I remember that as I go down, they're smaller, and as I go up, they're bigger. Just like a regular number line, as you go to the right, it's continuous. They're getting bigger. As you go to the left, it's continuous and they're getting smaller. So I'm going to try to place these numbers on my number line. So if I'm thinking of negative 3.75, I know it's between negative 3 and negative 4 and a little more than half. So I'm going to place that one about right here. Next one I have is negative 2.5. That one's pretty easy to place between negative 2 and negative 3, right in the middle there. Then I've got negative 3.09. So this is where it's a little bit tricky. Okay? Negative 3.09. If I think of those as like regular numbers on a number line, I know that 3.09 is going to go above negative 3.75. It's closer to 3, right? The number itself is closer to 3, so it's got to be somewhere up here. Negative 3.09. The last one, negative 0.2. So that's less than 1, pretty close to 0, right about here. Okay, so now that I've put them on this number line, and I know as I go down they're smaller, ordering least to greatest is pretty easy. My smallest number is the lowest one on my number line. So here's number 1. Next, number 2, number 3, and number 4. So let's write them out. The smallest number here is negative 3 7/75. Then we have negative 3 9/100. Next, negative 2 5/10. And lastly, negative 2/10. Those are those numbers in order from least to greatest. Alright, let's flip on to the back. So here comes example 3. I know it looks scary to think that we're going to do both positives and negatives, but I promise it's easier than just doing one or the other. So first thing I want you to do is maybe pay attention here to this is least to greatest. It's very important that you read that question, because sometimes that is going to change. Alright, and our number one mistake on tests that I see is people put them in the wrong order because they didn't read the question. The question says greatest to least, and they select the answer that says least to greatest. Their numbers are still in the correct order, but they're not in the order that the question asked for. So you really want to be careful and make sure you read that. The next thing I'm going to do here is this line right here. I'm going to highlight it so that it's really noticeable. I'm highlighting a line at 0. Because when I stack my decimals, I'm going to put them where they go on the number line. So let's think. If I have negative 0.88, is it going to be below or above the number line? Well, below my 0 line here is all the negatives. So this is a negative number. Negative 0.88 is going to go below the number line. Similarly, negative 0.85 is going to go below that 0 because it's a negative, leaving 22 hundredths and 2 hundredths to go above the line because they are positive numbers. Now this helps me divide them because now I only need to compare 2 numbers instead of 4. I'm going to compare my negatives to each other and my positives to each other because I already know that my negatives are less than my positives. So we're looking for the smallest number again. So I'm going to look between my negatives and decide which one's smaller. So if I think of having a number line again, this number line goes all the way to 4, but all my numbers are less than 1. So I'm going to make another one that just has 0 and 1 so that I could place them on here. Okay? And between 0 and 1 would, of course, be 0.5. These are all negative. So if I was going to put negative 88 hundredths on this number line, it's going to be down here pretty close to 1. If I put negative 85, negative 85 is further away from 1, right? Because 85 is a smaller number than 88. So it's further away from 1, so it's probably down this way. It's right there, right on my negative spot. So now that I've looked at those two, I know again that as I go down, this is smaller, and as I go up, they're bigger. So I know that negative 0.88 is my smaller number, so I'm going to label that number 1, making this one number 2. Now if I look at the positives, this one's pretty easy. I know, thinking of these as real numbers, 22 versus 2. 22 is the bigger number, 2 is the smaller number. So that's going to be 3, and there's my biggest number, 4. Now I'm going to rewrite them. Negative 88 hundredths, negative 85 hundredths, 2 hundredths, and 22 hundredths. Not too hard, right? Let's look at the last one. The last one, here's what I was talking about. This one says to order the numbers from greatest to least. So this whole time we've been thinking of what's the smallest number. Now I want to work the other way. I want to find the biggest number. So again, I'm going to make this line highlighted just so it's really bold for me that I know my positives go on top and my negatives go below. 3.25, that's positive. It's going above the line. Negative 3.5, negative, going below the line. 125 thousandths, it's a positive number. And negative 125 thousandths, that's a negative. I'm going to put some placeholders in here. Just makes life a little bit easier. So what I have to do now is put them in order. So if I look at these negatives, the one that's closer to 0, you know what? I did that backwards. We're looking for the biggest number. See, I already made that mistake. You have to be really careful with that. So my biggest number up here, I know 3 is bigger than 0, so here's number 1 and number 2. I'm looking for the bigger number here. It's closer to 0 if it's bigger. Here's 3, and here's 4. Let's put them in order. 3.25, 0.125 thousandths, negative 125 thousandths, and negative 3.5. There they are in order from greatest to least. So these are the notes. Watch them again if you need to.